I do not know when I lost my wife. Not the day she died, because she did not die. Not the day she left, because she never left. She is still here, sitting across from me at breakfast, sleeping beside me at night, going through all the motions of our life together. But somewhere along the way, in some moment I cannot identify, the woman I married stopped being there. What remains is something that looks like her, sounds like her, does everything she used to do. But the person behind the routine is gone. The worst part, that I cannot tell you when it happened. Was it 6 months ago? A year ago? Longer? I have replayed our conversations, our interactions, our entire relationship in my mind, trying to find the moment when Meredith stopped being Meredith. And I cannot find it. Maybe the change was so gradual, I never noticed. Maybe I have been living with an empty shell for years, too caught up in my own life to realize that the woman I loved had already disappeared. My name is Graham Kelsey. I am 38 years old, and I live in Thornfield, a mid-sized suburban town of about 50,000 people. I work as an accountant at a firm downtown, the kind of job where nothing exciting ever happens. I have lived here my whole adult life, married Meredith 15 years ago, settled into the comfortable routines of middle-class suburban existence, and now I am watching those routines consume everything around me. It started with small things, noticing that Meredith said the same phrases at the same times every day, noticing that our conversations followed the same patterns, covered the same ground, reached the same conclusions. I dismissed it as the comfort of long marriage, the way couples fall into rhythms after years together. Every married person knows what I am talking about. You finish each other's sentences. You know what your partner is going to say before they say it. That is just intimacy, familiarity, love expressed through predictability. But this was different. I just did not realize how different until that Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating breakfast, watching Meredith move through her morning routine. Coffee brewing, toast on plates, morning news playing on the television. She sat down across from me and picked up her cup, took a sip, set it down. The same sip she always took at the same time. The same angle of the cup, the same movement of her arm, the same small sound of satisfaction. I realized I could not remember the last time she had done anything different. Not just this morning, not just this week. I could not remember the last time she had deviated from the script in any way. The same breakfast, the same comments about the news, the same goodbye kiss as I left for work. Word for word, gesture for gesture, like watching a recording play on an endless loop. I decided to test it. Instead of my usual, "Have a good day," as I headed for the door, I said something random, something that did not fit the script. "I think I might quit my job and become a professional juggler." Meredith smiled, the same smile she always gave when I left for work, and said, "Have a good day, honey. Drive safe." As if she had not heard me at all. As if she had heard something else entirely. Something she was expecting. Something that triggered the appropriate response. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her clear the breakfast dishes with the same movements she made every morning. The same order, the same rhythm, the same careful placement of plates in the dishwasher. She did not look up, did not acknowledge that I was still there, just continued through her routine like a machine following a program. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while. On the drive to work, I started noticing other things. Things I had been subconsciously ignoring because they seemed too strange to be true. The same cars were in the same positions on the highway every single morning. Not similar cars in similar positions. The exact same cars, with the exact same drivers, maintaining the exact same distances between them. I knew because I had started recognizing license plates, faces glimpsed through windows, bumper stickers I had seen 100 times. The same people walked on the same sidewalks at the same times. The man with the briefcase crossing 4th Street at exactly 7:42. The woman jogging past the park at 7:48. The crossing guard at the elementary school, holding her sign at the same angle, making the same gestures, saying the same words to the same children. The world around me had become a loop, a pattern repeating without variation, and I had been too caught up in my own thoughts to notice until now. I arrived at work feeling like I was the only person moving through a frozen world. The accounting firm where I work is called Henderson and Associates, a mid-sized operation with about 40 employees. I have been here for 12 years, know everyone by name, know their habits and quirks and personalities. I know that Dennis tells the same 3 jokes every Friday. I know that Paula keeps a picture of her cats on her desk and talks about them to anyone who will listen. I know that Mr. Hewitt always clears his throat before giving criticism and always says good effort, even when the effort was not good. Today, I watch them with new eyes. Dennis Whitmore, who sits in the cubicle next to mine, typed at the same rhythm he always typed, the same tempo of keystrokes, the same pauses at the same intervals, the same small sighs when he reached the end of a section. He took his coffee breaks at the same times, walked to the break room along the same path, stood at the same spot by the coffee maker, made the same small talk with whoever was there. But the small talk was always the same small talk, the same comments about the weather, the same observations about how Monday feels like Monday. He cycled through the same 12 or 15 phrases, deploying them in the same order, never deviating from the script. I had always thought of Dennis as predictable, a creature of habit. Now I wondered if habit was all that was left. Paula Griggs at the reception desk answered the phone with the same words, the same inflection, every single time. Henderson and Associates, how may I direct your call? The same pause, the same smile, the same efficient transfer. I counted 17 calls during the morning, and her greeting was identical for each one. Not similar, identical. The same emphasis on the same syllables, the same slight uptick at the end, the same professional warmth that felt more like a recording than a person. Mr. Hewitt, my supervisor, walked the same path through the office at the same intervals, 9:15, 10:45, 12:30, 2:15. He stopped at the same desks in the same order, said the same encouraging words, made the same jokes that earned the same polite laughs. A circuit he had run 1,000 times, now running without any consciousness behind it. I started testing people, saying things that did not fit the script, asking questions that required genuine thought, introducing ideas that should have provoked reactions. I tried to have a real conversation with Dennis, not small talk about the weather or weekend plans, a real conversation about something new, something we had never discussed before. Hey Dennis, did you see that news story about the chemical spill in Ohio? Crazy stuff. Dennis looked up from his monitor, and there was a slight pause before he responded, just a fraction of a second too long, as if his brain was searching for the appropriate response and coming up slightly short. Yeah, that is something, he said. Crazy world we live in. It was a response that sounded like an answer, but contained no actual content. He had not engaged with what I said at all. He had just produced words that seemed appropriate and gone back to his typing. I tried again with Paula, with Mr. Hewitt, with other co-workers throughout the day. The same pattern emerged every time. A slight pause when I said something unexpected, followed by a generic response that approximated engagement without actually achieving it. No one laughed at jokes they had not heard before. No one had opinions about topics they had not already discussed. No one surprised me in any way. Late in the afternoon, I encountered someone different. I was walking past the legal department, a section of the office I rarely visited, when a woman stepped out of a doorway and nearly collided with me. She looked at me, and something in her expression made me stop. Recognition. Genuine recognition. Not the empty familiarity I had been seeing all day. You see it too, don't you? She said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. See what? That they have all stopped. Everyone has stopped. Her name was Lillian Marsh. She worked in legal, had been with the company for 8 years, and I had spoken to her maybe a dozen times in all those years. But she looked at me now, like I was the first real person she had seen in months. We found a quiet place to talk, a corner of the parking garage where no one ever went. Lillian told me what she had observed, and everything she said matched my own experience. She had first noticed it with her husband. The same patterns I had seen with Meredith. The repetitive routines, the scripted responses, the complete absence of spontaneity. Then her neighbors, her friends, her co-workers. One by one, they all stopped. Not stopped living, she clarified. They still eat, still work, still sleep. Well, they go through the motions of sleeping, but they stopped thinking, stopped having new thoughts, new reactions, new ideas. They are running on autopilot now, executing routines without any consciousness behind them. How long has this been happening? Lillian shook her head. I think it started about 6 months ago, maybe longer. At first, it was just a few people, then more, spreading through the town like a wave. Now, she gestured vaguely at the world around us. Now, I think, we might be the only ones left. In Thornfield, at least. How does it spread? What causes it? I do not know. I have theories, but no proof. A virus, maybe. Something in the water or the air. But the mechanism does not really matter, does it? What matters is what is happening. People are becoming empty, going through the motions of life without any life behind them. I asked the question I had been dreading. How do you know when someone has changed? How can you tell for certain? Lillian's face fell. You cannot always tell. That is the horror of it. They look the same, they sound the same, they do everything they have always done. But the person behind the routine is gone. There is nothing there anymore, just machinery, going through the motions. I thought about Meredith, about my wife, who I had loved for 15 years, about the woman who slept beside me every night and ate breakfast with me every morning and said the same things in the same ways at the same times. When did she change? When did I lose her? I could not remember the last time she had surprised me, could not remember the last time she had said something I did not expect, had an opinion I had not heard before, looked at me with genuine curiosity or affection, rather than the programmed responses of a well-trained system. Maybe it had been months. Maybe it had been years. Maybe I had been living with an empty shell for longer than I wanted to admit, and I was only now realizing it because I had finally started paying attention. Over the following weeks, I started paying closer attention to the world around me. I watched people interact and looked for the signs Lillian had described, the slight pause before responding to something unexpected, the generic phrases that sounded right but meant nothing, the complete absence of spontaneity or genuine engagement. I started mentally counting, estimating how many people were still real and how many were running on autopilot. At the grocery store, maybe one person in 50 seemed genuinely present. At the gas station, none at all. Walking down Main Street, I saw hundreds of people going about their days, and almost all of them moved with that same mechanical precision, that same scripted predictability. I found a few others who seemed normal, scattered across the town like survivors of a disaster that no one else could see. A teenager at the library who looked confused and frightened, jumping at small sounds, watching the other patrons with barely concealed terror. He was maybe 16, sitting at a table in the back corner, a book open in front of him that he was not reading. His eyes kept darting around the room, watching the other people, watching them move through their routines with that mechanical precision. When I caught his eye, he looked away quickly, afraid that I might be one of them, afraid that acknowledging me might somehow make things worse. An old man in the park who talked to himself because no one else would really listen. He sat on a bench feeding pigeons, carrying on a running commentary about the weather, the birds, the state of the world. The people who walked past him did not seem to hear him at all. They followed their paths, maintained their schedules, ignored him completely. He had become invisible to a world that no longer had room for the unexpected. A woman at a coffee shop who stared at the other customers like they were exhibits in a museum. She sat by the window with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, watching the people come and go, her face a mask of horror and fascination. I approached the woman at the coffee shop. She flinched when I sat down across from her, then relaxed slightly when she saw something in my eyes that told her I was different. Her name was Irene Tully. She was in her mid-40s, with grey-streaked hair and deep lines around her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. When I told her what I had observed, she started crying. "My son," she said. "My son is one of them now." His name was Christopher. He was 12 years old. She lost him 3 months ago. Not to death, not to any kind of illness that doctors could diagnose, but to the infection. He still lived with her, still went to school, still ate dinner at the table every night. But he stopped being her son somewhere along the way. He used to be so curious, Irene said through her tears. Always asking questions, always wanting to know how things worked. He would come home from school bursting with things to tell me, stories about his friends, ideas he had, dreams about what he wanted to be when he grew up. She paused, wiping her eyes with a napkin that was already damp. Now he comes home and goes to his room. He does his homework the same way every night. He eats dinner, the same foods in the same order. He answers my questions with the same words, over and over. How was school? Fine. What did you learn? The usual stuff. Do you have homework? Already done. The same conversation, every single night. When did you first notice? I asked. That is the worst part, Irene said. I cannot remember when it happened. One day I realized he had not said anything surprising in weeks, had not asked a question I had not heard before, had not laughed at anything new or gotten excited about anything unexpected. And I looked at him and I knew he was gone. But I cannot tell you when it happened. Maybe it was gradual, so slow I never noticed. Maybe it was sudden and I just did not see it. I will never know, and that is almost worse than losing him. I understood exactly what she meant. That uncertainty, that inability to pinpoint the moment of loss was almost more painful than the loss itself. At least with death, you know when it happened. You have a moment to mark, a before and after, a clear line between when someone was alive and when they were gone. This was different. This was a death without a death, a loss without a moment, a disappearance that happened so quietly you might never have noticed at all. That evening, I went home and watched Meredith with new eyes. She was making dinner when I arrived, the same dinner she had made last Tuesday, chicken and vegetables, the same recipe she had learned from her mother years ago. I watched her move through the kitchen, chopping and stirring and seasoning, every gesture identical to every other time she had made this meal. The knife came down on the cutting board at the same angles, making the same sounds. She stirred the pot exactly 7 times, paused, then stirred 3 more times. She reached for the salt at the same moment, added the same amount, tasted the sauce with the same expression of consideration before deciding it was done. I had watched her cook 1,000 times over the course of our marriage. I had always found it comforting, the familiar rhythms of her movement, the practiced ease of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Now those same rhythms felt like evidence of something terrible. Over dinner, I tried to have a real conversation. "How was your day?" I asked. "Good, busy, the usual." The same words she always used, the same slight smile, the same shrug of her shoulders. "Anything interesting happen?" "Not really, just the usual stuff." She took a bite of chicken, chewed, swallowed. The same movements, the same timing. I tried a different approach. "I have been thinking about taking a trip. Maybe next month. Somewhere we have never been before. What do you think?" Meredith looked at me, and there was a pause, just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable if you were not looking for it. Then she smiled. "That sounds nice, honey." Not enthusiasm, not curiosity about where we might go or what we might do, just a generic positive response that could have applied to anything. I pushed further. "Do you remember that vacation we took to Maine? 5 years ago, when we got lost trying to find that lighthouse. Meredith's face lit up with recognition, and for a moment I felt hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she was still in there, still remembering, still alive. Then she started telling the story, word for word, inflection for inflection, the exact same story she had told me the last time I asked, and the time before that, and every time she had ever recounted it. The same pause for dramatic effect at the same moment, the same laugh at the same joke, the same wistful smile at the same memory. Not remembering, reciting, playing back a recording of a story rather than actually reliving the experience. And then we found that little restaurant on the pier, she said, and the lobster was the best I have ever had. The same words, the same slight laugh at the same moment, the same satisfied smile at the end. I could not take it anymore. "Do you still love me?" I asked. The pause was longer this time, longer than it should have been for such a simple question. Her expression flickered, processing, searching for the appropriate response. "Of course I do, honey," she said finally. The same smile, the same tone. Words that sounded right but felt hollow, automatic, pulled from a database of appropriate things to say. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror and cried. The woman I married was gone. I did not know when it happened, could not pinpoint the moment of loss, would never be able to say goodbye to her properly because she had already disappeared by the time I noticed she was leaving. She was still there in the house, still going through the motions of our life together, but the person behind those motions had vanished. I was a widower whose wife was still alive. I was grieving someone I still saw every day. I met with Lillian again, and with Irene. We shared what we had learned, tried to piece together the scope of what was happening. "There is something else I noticed," Lillian said, "about the infected. They do not sleep anymore. Not really." "What do you mean?" "They go to bed. They close their eyes. They lie still for hours. But they are not sleeping. No dreams, no twitching, no shifting around. Just complete stillness, like a machine on standby mode." I watched my husband for hours one night. He did not move once, did not make a sound. His breathing was so regular, it was like a metronome. I thought about Meredith, about the nights I had lain awake, listening to her breathe, taking comfort in the sound of her presence beside me. Her breathing was perfectly even, perfectly regular, never changing rhythm, never interrupted by snores or sighs or the small sounds of genuine sleep. She used to snore sometimes, used to shift and murmur and steal the blankets, used to wake up in the middle of the night and shuffle to the bathroom and come back to bed with cold feet that she pressed against my legs. When did that stop? I could not remember. Another loss I had not noticed until it was already complete. Through careful observation and quiet conversations with the few remaining unaffected people I could find, we tried to estimate the scope of the infection. At least 90% of Thornfield was affected, probably more. The town was still functioning because the infected kept doing what they had always done, going to work and buying groceries and paying bills. The machinery of civilization kept running even when there was no one conscious left to operate it, and it was spreading beyond Thornfield. Lillian had contacts in other towns, other cities. The reports were the same everywhere. People going through the motions without anyone home behind their eyes. Over the following weeks, I noticed the infected starting to deteriorate. Not physically. They still looked healthy, still moved and functioned normally on the surface. A doctor examining any of them would find nothing wrong, no symptoms, no signs of disease. They were physically fine. But the routines were getting shorter, simpler, more repetitive. I noticed it first with Dennis at work. His repertoire of small talk was shrinking. Where he used to have a dozen different comments about the weather, now he only had 3 or 4. Where he used to tell different jokes on different days, now he told the same joke every Friday, word for word, as if it were the only joke he knew. Conversations that used to last 5 minutes now lasted 2. Tasks that used to involve small variations, minor adjustments based on circumstances, now followed the exact same path every single time. I watched Dennis complete a report and realized he was making the exact same mouse movements, the exact same keystrokes that he had made the day before. Not similar, identical, like watching a video loop. Paula at reception had stopped saying anything beyond her greeting. Callers who asked complicated questions got nothing but, "Let me transfer you now." She had lost the ability to handle anything unexpected. Mr. Hewitt no longer stopped at all the desks during his rounds. His circuit had shortened, his comments had simplified, his jokes had disappeared entirely. He just walked through the office, nodding, occasionally saying, "Good work," to no one in particular, then returned to his office. The autopilot was becoming more basic, more mechanical, like a program slowly losing data, corrupting, forgetting how to do things it used to do easily. Meredith's repertoire of responses was shrinking too. She used to have dozens of phrases she would use in conversation, small variations that made her speech feel natural and spontaneous. Now, she cycled through the same 15 or 20 responses, using them regardless of context, plugging them in wherever they approximately fit. "That sounds nice." "I am fine." The usual. "Do not worry about it." "Maybe later." The same phrases, repeated endlessly, applied to questions they barely fit. Her movements were becoming more repetitive too. She made the same breakfast every morning now, not because she liked it, but because it was the only breakfast she remembered how to make. She watched the same television shows in the same order, changing channels at the same times, regardless of what was actually on. She walked the same paths through the house, turning at the same corners, touching the same surfaces. I realized the infected were not stable. They were slowly winding down, like clockwork running out of spring. The routines were collapsing, the responses simplifying, the behaviors narrowing to smaller and smaller sets of repetitive actions. I thought about what would happen when there was nothing left to repeat. When the routines simplified so much that they could not function at all. Would they just stop, like machines running out of power? Would they stand frozen in place, unable to move without a script to follow? Or would they keep going, reduced to the most basic functions, eating and breathing and nothing else, bodies without minds, existing without living? I did not know. I was not sure I wanted to know. Eventually, there would be nothing left. Not death, but something worse. Bodies that continued to function while the systems that operated them dwindled to nothing, empty shells going through ever simpler motions until even those motions stopped. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. Lillian stopped coming to our meetings 2 weeks ago. At first, I thought she was just busy, or maybe taking a break from the grimness of our conversations. We had been meeting regularly at that corner of the parking garage, sharing observations, trying to make sense of what was happening around us. It was the only time I felt truly connected to another conscious mind. When she missed the first meeting, I was not worried. When she missed the second, I started to feel uneasy. When she did not answer my calls or respond to my messages, I knew something was wrong. I went to her house to check on her and found her sitting in her living room, staring at the television. The same show playing that had been playing when I visited before. The same position on the couch. The same empty expression. "Lillian," I said, hoping to see some spark of recognition. She turned to look at me, and there was nothing there. No recognition, no awareness, no sign of the intelligent, frightened woman I'd been talking to for weeks. Just a reflexive response to someone saying her name. "Can I help you?" she asked. The same polite phrase she probably said to everyone who came to her door. I tried to remind her of our conversations, of the things she had told me, of the fears we had shared. Nothing reached her. Nothing got through. The woman who had first helped me understand what was happening was gone. I left without answering. There was nothing to say. Lillian was gone. Another casualty of whatever was spreading through our world. Another mind switched off. Another person reduced to routine. Another friend I had lost without getting to say goodbye. Irene was still unaffected when I last saw her, but she had retreated into herself, barely speaking, spending her days watching her son go through the motions of a life he no longer lived. The teenager from the library had disappeared. Maybe he had left town. Maybe the infection had taken him. Maybe he was hiding somewhere alone. The old man in the park sat on the same bench every day now, staring at nothing, no longer even talking to himself. I was increasingly alone. One night, I decided I had to know for certain about Meredith. I had been living with the uncertainty for weeks, watching her go through the motions, wondering if she was truly gone or if I was just imagining things, unable to confirm or deny what my heart already knew. The uncertainty was destroying me, eating away at whatever remained of my sanity. I needed proof. I needed to know beyond any doubt. I devised a test, something that would require genuine consciousness to pass, something the autopilot could not possibly fake. I waited until the middle of the night. Meredith was lying beside me, eyes closed, breathing that perfect metronomic rhythm that had replaced her natural sleep. The room was dark and quiet, and I lay there for a long time, gathering the courage to do what I had to do. Then I screamed. I sat up in bed and screamed as loud as I could, shouting that the house was on fire, that we had to get out, that everything was burning. A conscious person would have reacted with fear, with confusion, with adrenaline flooding their system. They would have jumped up, looked around wildly, responded to the emergency with the instinctive panic that danger provokes in living things. Meredith opened her eyes and sat up calmly. "What is wrong, honey?" The same tone she always used, the same mild concern. No racing heart, no dilated pupils, No physiological response to danger at all. Just a gentle inquiry, the kind of response you would give to someone who had spoken your name, not someone who had screamed about fire. I kept pushing. I told her I was having chest pains, that I thought I was having a heart attack. She nodded and said, "That is too bad. Let me know if you need anything." I told her my mother had died, that my brother had been in a car accident, that the doctor had called with terrible news. Each time she responded with the same calm, generic phrases. "I am sorry to hear that. That is terrible. Is there anything I can do?" Words that sounded appropriate but felt hollow. Sympathy without emotion. Concern without caring. Finally, desperately, I told her I was leaving her, that I had fallen in love with someone else, and I was moving out, that our marriage was over, that I did not love her anymore. She looked at me for a moment, that slight pause that I had learned to recognize as processing. Then she smiled. "Okay, honey. Let me know if you need any help packing." No tears, no anger, no questions about why or who or what had gone wrong. Just acceptance, blank and immediate. The response of a system that had no emotional stake in the input it was processing. The woman I married was gone. What sat beside me was just an echo, a shadow, a machine wearing her face and speaking with her voice. The person who had loved me, who had laughed at my jokes and held me when I was sad, and built a life with me for 15 years, had disappeared somewhere along the way. And I had not even noticed until it was too late. I broke down completely. I sat on the floor of our bedroom and wept, grieving for a wife who was still technically alive, mourning a loss that no one else would ever recognize. Meredith watched me with empty eyes. Occasionally she offered a there, or "it will be okay," words that should have been comforting, but felt like mockery from a system that did not understand why I was upset. I had never felt more alone in my life. I drove to the next town, hoping to find somewhere the infection had not reached. The town was called Ashford, about 30 miles east of Thornfield. I had been there many times before, had eaten at its restaurants and shopped at its stores. I knew what it looked like when it was alive, when its streets were full of real people doing real things. I found the same thing I had found in Thornfield. People going through motions, routines, without consciousness. The same slight pauses when I said something unexpected. The same generic responses that approximated engagement without achieving it. The same empty eyes. At a gas station, I tried to have a conversation with the attendant. He responded with the same phrases every gas station attendant uses, but without any variation, without any of the small human touches that distinguish one interaction from another. At a restaurant, I watched a couple eat dinner together in complete silence. Not the comfortable silence of people who know each other well, but the empty silence of people who have nothing left to say. They ate their food in the same order, chewed the same number of times, reached for their drinks at the same moments. Synchronized, automated, inhuman. I drove further, to the city an hour away. A city of 200,000 people, with all the complexity and chaos that implies. The streets were full of people, thousands of them, going about their days, filling the sidewalks and the shops and the offices. From a distance, it looked normal. It looked alive. Up close, it was the same. the same mechanical precision, the same scripted predictability, the same absence of genuine consciousness. I watched a street performer playing guitar and realized he was playing the same song he had been playing for hours, the same notes in the same order, his fingers moving through memorized patterns without any awareness of what he was creating. I watched a mother push a stroller down the sidewalk, saying the same soothing words to her baby over and over, her voice flat and empty. I watched businessmen talk on phones, saying words that sounded like conversation but contained no actual communication. The infection was not limited to Thornfield. It had spread everywhere I could see. Every town, every city, every community I visited showed the same signs. The world was running on autopilot, and I might be one of the only people left who could see it. I checked the internet when I got home, looking for signs that others had noticed what was happening. But the internet itself was changing. The same discussions repeated endlessly, the same arguments recycled without resolution, the same content posted and reposted by accounts that might or might not have conscious minds behind them. The digital world was becoming an autopilot too, created by people who no longer had new thoughts, maintained by systems that kept running without oversight. I tried to trace back how far this had spread, how long it had been happening. 6 months, Lillian had said. But maybe it started earlier, somewhere else. Maybe it had been spreading for years, slowly, quietly, moving from person to person, town to town, country to country. And no one noticed because the infected keep doing what they have always done. The outbreak started 6 months ago. Most people have not noticed yet. But maybe the outbreak started longer ago than that. Maybe it has been happening for decades, for generations, spreading so slowly that each wave of infection just seemed like the normal drift of society. People becoming less creative, less spontaneous, less alive. And we called it growing up, settling down, getting stuck in a rut. What if the rut was the infection? What if everyone who seemed boring or predictable or set in their ways was actually already gone? Alone in my car, driving through a world of sleepwalkers, I began to doubt myself. How do I know I am not infected? The infected do not know they are infected. They think they are normal. They go through their days believing they are conscious, believing they are making choices, believing they are alive. What if I am just another automaton, running through a routine I cannot perceive? What if my awareness is just another layer of the autopilot, a subroutine that produces the feeling of consciousness without the reality of it? I tried to test myself. Can I think new thoughts? Can I have ideas I have never had before? But how would I know if a thought is truly new or just a recombination of old patterns? How would I know if my sense of consciousness is genuine or just a sophisticated simulation? The more I thought about it, the less certain I became. Maybe everyone feels this way. Maybe the infected still feel conscious, still feel like they are thinking and choosing and living. Maybe the only difference between me and them is that I am questioning it and they are not. Or maybe the questioning is just another routine, another programmed response, another behavior that looks like consciousness, but is really just machinery. I cannot tell. I will never be able to tell. And maybe that is the most terrifying thing of all. I returned to my house, to Meredith. She was sitting in the living room, watching television. The same show she always watched at this time of day, the same position on the couch, the same angle of her head, the same empty absorption in the flickering screen. I sat down next to her and took her hand. She did not react, did not turn to look at me, did not squeeze my fingers, did not acknowledge my presence at all, just continued watching, her hand limp in mine, her attention fixed on the screen. I wondered if she could feel me there, wondered if there was anything left inside her that remembered loving me, that remembered our life together, that remembered being Meredith instead of just going through the motions of being Meredith. I will never know. I have accepted that I cannot save her, cannot save anyone. The infection has already won. It spread too far, too fast, too quietly. By the time anyone noticed, it was already everywhere. There is nothing to do but watch the world wind down. Watch the routines get simpler. Watch the light fade from the last few conscious eyes. Watch humanity slide into an endless loop of repetitive behavior, a civilization of automata, going through the motions of life without any life behind them. The show ended, and another one began. The same show that always plays next, at this time, on this channel. Meredith did not change the channel. Neither did I. We sat together in the blue glow of the screen, two shapes that used to be people, and I wondered if I was still wondering, or if that was just the routine now too. Wondering without awareness, questioning without consciousness, the motions of a mind that has already stopped. I cannot tell if I am still thinking these thoughts or just replaying them, running through the same loops of doubt and grief and fear that I have run through 100 times before. I cannot tell if the words I am writing now are new or if I have written them before, if this is genuine expression or just another routine masquerading as creativity. Maybe I am the last conscious person in Thornfield. Maybe I am the last conscious person anywhere. Or maybe I stopped being conscious months ago and just have not noticed yet. Maybe the infection does not feel like anything. Maybe it just feels like life, like normal, like the slow, comfortable settling into patterns that everyone experiences as they get older. Maybe I have been infected all along. Maybe you have too. How would you know? How would anyone know? The outbreak started 6 months ago. Most people have not noticed yet. But maybe that is what the infected would say. Maybe that is part of the routine, the programmed belief that you are different, that you are aware, that you are somehow immune to what has taken everyone else. I look at Meredith, at the woman I loved, at the shell that remains. I look at myself, at the man I think I am, at the thoughts I think I am thinking, and I cannot tell the difference. I cannot tell if I am grieving or just going through the motions of grief. I cannot tell if I am writing this as a warning or just executing a program that produces words that look like warnings. I cannot tell if any of this is real. The television plays on, the same shows, the same schedule, the same flickering light. Meredith sits beside me, breathing that perfect rhythm, existing without living. And I sit beside her, wondering if I am wondering or just running a subroutine that feels like wondering. The outbreak started 6 months ago. Most people have not noticed yet. Maybe I have not noticed either. Maybe none of us ever will. Maybe this is just what life looks like now, going through the motions forever.